Should you update to the iPhone 13 or the iPhone 13 Pro after the 14 launches? Let's begin by talking about what you're going to get when it comes to kind of their build and design. Over the year, I really appreciated the lighter feel of the iPhone 13 versus the 13 Pro. The weight does give the 13 Pro a more premium feel though, so if you're into that premium nature, this one definitely will suffice. It feels a little top heavy with this camera system on the iPhone 13 Pro, but it's got a lot of weight. Actually, for a 6.1 inch screen, that phone is quite heavy. It's well over 200 grams, 204. Over here, 174. So it's significantly lighter on the iPhone 13. So if you like that light build, you'll enjoy this. The iPhone 13 Pro also will probably see the bigger camera upgrade. So definitely I feel like the 13 will kind of feel a little bit more relevant. And the reason why is because I feel like the upgrades to the camera won't be quite as significant as this one over here. Apple probably will surprise us, but at the same time, I feel like they might keep this diagonal look here for at least one more generation. And usually the Pro phones seem to get a little bit forgotten about when the next model comes out, whereas the 13, the 12, the 11, those don't get forgotten because Apple keeps them around, keeps them available in stores. So the 13, if you care about relevancy, probably will stick around a little bit longer than the Pro series model does. So overall design though, the Pro for me is the winner. If you want premium all around, it's the better phone in terms of that. But if you want different colors and stuff like that, you want it to look a little bit more current because they're keeping it around at the Apple stores, this will probably be the move for you. And if you definitely prefer the lighter feel, it'll be the 13. But again, this phone will probably come down about $100 or so, but don't expect this to get a massive drop. People think that the 14 is going to come out and people are just going to sell this for nothing. Nah, that's not going to happen. If you can find it now for $1,000, people probably sell it for $800 or $750, something like that. But it's not going to be like $650, $550, nothing like that. But even if you cop this at $800 or so, that's still a much better deal than $1,000 or so, because this one definitely going to run you well over $1,000, especially if you start up in the storage. Price wise, you're still going to get a better value if you go ahead and get the iPhone 13 after the 14 launches. Now, when it comes to their displays, you definitely do see the ProMotion if you do look at these side by side. The iPhone 13 Pro has constantly impressed me with how smooth it's been. But the thing about iOS is that it's even buttery smooth on a 60 Hz panel. So if you're looking for smooth phone, either one's gonna provide that to you. If you're not really into tech like that and you're just trying to pick up a really nice iPhone, I don't know if the average person will be able to detect it. If you do care about high-end specs, I really recommend picking up the iPhone 13 Pro in terms of display. Not only does it get to 1000 nits of brightness, which is 200 nits brighter than the iPhone 13, again, it does have more of a smooth panel, especially you'll see it when you are scrolling through news articles and stuff like that. Again, if you are able to detect this stuff, I can see it easily. Even scrolling through the home screens, it looks much smoother. And also it gets a little bit better battery life because that ProMotion display is adaptive. It can range from 10 Hz to 120 Hz. And I've noticed that the 13 Pro is the move if you want the better battery life. Other than that, the displays are all going to offer you the same size. They're the same type of notches. The color accuracy is pretty similar on both. They're both going to be great panels for just viewing photos, watching videos. They do have little notches here at the top that people are pretty used to at this point, but overall, other than that, pretty similar. They both have true tone, dark mode, stuff like that. So either way, you're going to be fine there. Again, it just all comes down to the ProMotion if you want those battery savings from ProMotion. All right, so when it comes to software, it's essentially the same thing either way you go. So no matter which phone you're using, you're going to get yourself the same experience, same applications from Apple, same exact app library. There is a difference in the camera department where you do have a couple more features for the iPhone 13 Pro, like the extra camera lens button, which is a 3x right there. But other than that, there's not a major change amongst these two. The iPhone 13's camera also is amazing with the cinematic mode, and you have the same widget type support, so it's really no change there. I mean, you're gonna get the same software support long term. Now I want to talk about the A15 chipset here. Now there's one area I would really recommend the iPhone 13 Pro, and it's something I noticed throughout my usage with these two. It's just going back through the apps. You know, you have more RAM here, 5.52 gigabytes here on Geekbench. It says 3.56. Essentially what I'm saying is that I found that the iPhone 13, after having a lot of applications open, can, you know, reload something. So the 13 Pro is the power user phone. If you know you're the type of person who wants to use this phone in a power user fashion, like video editing, a ton of stuff like that, you're definitely going to want the 13 Pro, even if it's going to cost you a little bit more. Now, using both these phones, I'm going to tell you why you should definitely consider the 13 Pro if you care a lot about the camera. You know, these days we're using our phones for everything, and having that zoom lens actually comes in handy, that telephoto. Plus the macro mode is so fun to use that it's really just something I missed a lot when using my iPhone 13. You get used to taking these close-up photos once you have a lens that's capable of doing it. And then you really don't want to go back to a phone that cannot do macro photo. Now, again, if you're not a big photo taker, get the 13. You're not going to care. But I mean, the difference is pretty obvious, dude. Like day to day, you'll see that it's pretty obvious. So look at the quality on the 13 Pro on a close-up shot versus the 13. It's night and day. So that's one of the biggest differences I noticed these two. And also, again, using your phone a lot day to day, I just really miss the 13 Pro when I don't have the telephoto, because when I'm zooming in on the iPhone 13, and I'm not saying this from a YouTuber's perspective, I'm saying this from a consumer's perspective, going to 5X, it's just not that long. I didn't use these phones mostly for YouTube videos. I use this camera right here for YouTube videos. So I'm saying this just from an iPhone user's perspective. You kind of miss or not having that zoom sometimes. You just sometimes got to reach on something and you're like, this one can't zoom. So you got to walk closer to it or something like that. So definitely camera wise, I really strongly recommend you pay the extra if you care about camera. If you're like the person who never whips out your phone camera that often, you just don't care, and the 13 is for you. Selfie cameras though, they're pretty much the same though, so I wouldn't be too concerned about the selfie cameras. They also have pretty good videos on the front, 4K 60, like I've talked about 1,000 times. This one over here, pretty similar as well. So 4K 60 on the front of this guy. You can definitely match up your videos. Not a big change on the front facing cameras. They both have 12 megapixel selfies, and they could both do the same amount of video. Audio wise, these things are neck and neck. There was like no difference in how they sounded through their external speakers. The iPhone 13 appears a little louder, maybe because the body's a little more hollow, whereas I found a little bit clearer bass sound. It was just very slight though on the iPhone 13 Pro. Overall though, they're about the same when it comes to speaker performance. When it comes to battery, the iPhone 13 Pro actually has a smaller battery size, but it gets a little bit better battery life in my experience because of that adaptive refresh like we talked about earlier. And here you have a slightly larger battery, which kind of makes up for it, giving you longer than the iPhone 12 and pretty close to the iPhone 11, around that similar kind of battery life all day stuff on both of them. I constantly found myself wanting to use the 13 Pro for its, you know, smoother panel, but also it's about 1 hour to 1.5 hour better battery life. So that's what I experienced about a year of using these, swapping between them. And I constantly would get this phone down to like 30, 20. Sometimes I'd be in the red on a 13. Whereas with the iPhone 13 Pro, you're not going to get it down to that level quite as much as the iPhone 13. Well, the distance a little bit better on the 13 Pro. A couple other things: signal strength, 5G was strong on both of them. They had really good performance even when tethering your connection. Also, I found that the phone call quality was pretty similar on both. They both have similar sounding speakers, so that's not going to be very different. Overall, they do have similar Bluetooth connections as well as Wi-Fi speed, so Wi-Fi 6 on both of them. They're super fast on the internet, so not going to be a big problem there. And they both have Face ID with biometric security unlocking with your banking and things like that, and security apps and stuff, all of that stuff. So at the end of the day, which one should you buy after the 14 launches? Now, Apple's going to keep this around. Obviously, they might drop a storage option or two. They're going to keep all the colors though. So for me, I think for most people, the 13 is the one you should buy. And the reason why is because 13 Pro, number one, is going to be dropped out of lineup. They do this every year because it doesn't make financial sense to keep the higher end Pros around when a new higher end Pro comes out. So you're not going to see this one officially available anymore. That kind of makes it lose a little bit of relevancy, but not much. The thing is that sellers are not going to want to just get rid of this for cheap. People see the value in the iPhone and they know that people will pay for the premium edition. So even when you go on eBay, you go on Swappo, you go on these sites to buy these phones, I don't see them. I think people are still going to sell these at $900, $875, stuff like those. Prices are just nowhere near what you're going to be able to get a 13 for. And this phone's about 85–90% of what the 13 Pro is. So my recommendation for most people is wait it out, pick yourself up a 13 and be on your way. But I will be covering the 14 versus both of these phones, so stay tuned for that. Subscribe if you haven't already. Any more questions, comments, concerns, drop them down below, and I'll catch you on the next one. Nick here. Be sure to be well, and peace.